The cafeteria was loud, metal trays clinking, sneakers squeaking on linoleum floors, laughter echoing in pockets. But for Malik Jackson, the sound blurred into a hollow buzz. He stood in line, clutching a worn-out lunch voucher. His hoodie hung slightly too big on his frame, sleeves swallowed his hands. He hadn't said a word since second period, and the knot in his stomach wasn't just hunger, it was habit. Ahead of him, a group of boys in Letterman jackets snickered. One of them, Trent Wallace, blond, tall, the quarterback whose dad practically owned the school, leaned back and whispered just loud enough, "Look who's still freeloading. Man, they really will let anyone in this school now." Another chimed in, "Bet his ancestors built the cafeteria though, huh?" The laughter hit Malik like stones. His grip on the voucher tightened, the crumpled paper digging into his palm. He said nothing. He always said nothing. But inside, something cracked. He took a shaky breath and moved forward. When the lunch lady reached out for the voucher, her eyes barely met his. "ID?" she asked flatly. I don't have it today, ma'am," he whispered. She clicked her tongue, looking over her shoulder. "No ID, no lunch. Rules." Trent leaned in, grinning. "Come on, just let him eat. Or are the handouts done for the month?" That did it. Malik stepped back, head low. His eyes stung, his throat burned. He wasn't angry. He was something worse. He was tired. He turned away from the line. Left the cafeteria. In the hallway, fluorescent lights flickered above him. He moved to the far corner of the stairwell, the one with the broken camera where nobody ever looked. And then he sat. And he cried. Not loudly. Not the way that demanded help. The kind of cry that came from years of being overlooked, underheard, misnamed, mislabeled. He buried his face in his arms and just let it happen. For once, he didn't try to be strong. For once, he let himself feel all of it. The shame, the frustration, the isolation. Because what else can you do when the world keeps telling you, you don't belong here? But that wasn't the end, because somewhere inside that broken moment, something small and burning stayed lit. Not rage, not revenge, conviction. And one day, everyone who made him feel invisible would have no choice but to see him. Malik came home with swollen eyes and a silence heavier than usual. His sneakers were muddy, his backpack half-zipped, and the weight on his shoulders had nothing to do with books. His father, Raymond Jackson, sat at the kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm coffee, still wearing his work boots and the kind of fatigue that only decades of hard labor could leave behind. He looked up the moment Malik stepped in. "You all right, son?" Raymond asked, not looking for a lie. Malik hesitated. "Yeah," he said, but it came out too quiet to believe. Raymond didn't press. He simply pulled out the chair next to him and nodded for Malik to sit. The silence stretched between them like an old scar. Finally, Malik spoke. "They told me I should go back to where I came from. Said my name doesn't belong on the debate board. Said people like me shouldn't be in that school." Raymond's jaw tightened. He didn't rush to comfort. Didn't try to sugarcoat it. Instead, he leaned in. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and steady. "They're gonna call you things. Try to shrink you. Make you question why you even try. But you don't fold, Malik. You hear me? Ain't nobody gonna hand you power. You either take up space, or you get erased." Malik blinked, trying to hold back fresh tears. He wanted to believe his father. He wanted to be strong. But the pain was still raw. "You think I'm strong enough?" he asked. Raymond didn't hesitate. "No," he said. "Not yet. But you will be." He reached across the table and placed a firm hand on Malik's shoulder. "Because you're my son, and we don't run from hate. We rise above it." And in that moment, something shifted in Malik. The pain didn't disappear, but it had somewhere to go now, somewhere to transform. The next day at school, Malik walked through the hallways with the weight of his father's words still anchored in his chest. He kept his head down, trying to avoid the same sneers. the same voices that had burned into his memory the day before. But hate doesn't wait for confrontation. It lingers in whispers, in glances, in the slow erosion of a person's sense of place. In the cafeteria, the table where Malik usually sat alone had been cleared of his things. His tray was on the floor, spilled, untouched. "They thought it was trash," one boy muttered with a smirk. Malik didn't respond. He bent down slowly, picked up the tray and walked out of the cafeteria, not saying a word. But every step was heavy. He could feel his throat tighten, his chest burn. He wanted to scream, to cry, to vanish. But instead, he walked until he found the school's debate board posted near the library. A list of names, selected finalists for the county-wide civic debate competition. He scanned the sheet. His name was gone. He blinked, looked again. Gone. He had qualified. His last round was flawless. His teacher had told him it was one of the best arguments presented. So why wasn't he on the list? He stormed into Mr. Collins' office, the faculty advisor for the competition. "You said I qualified," Malik said, voice shaking. "You said I made it." Collins didn't look up from his desk. "There were adjustments to the roster. Other students had more experience. It's nothing personal, Malik." "Is it because of my name?" Malik asked, barely above a whisper. Collins sighed. "Malik, don't make this about race." But what else could it be about? He had the scores. He had the facts. He had the voice, the structure, the presence. But somehow, he was still invisible when it mattered. Later that night, Malik sat on the porch with his notebook open, staring at the blank page. The wind tugged at the corners, but he didn't care. He was too full of questions that wouldn't quiet. Why did he have to keep proving that he belonged in rooms he'd already earned his way into, and if the system wasn't going to make space for him? Was it time he built something of his own? That's where it started. The first idea. The spark. Not just to fight back, but to build forward. Malik didn't sleep that night. His room, dimly lit by a desk lamp, was scattered with crumpled pages, pencil smudges, and a single open laptop humming in silence. But amid the wreckage of self-doubt, something had shifted. The sadness hadn't disappeared, but it had hardened into something sharper, focused, almost dangerous. If they wouldn't give him a seat at the table, he'd build his own, and he'd start with the one place that had tried hardest to make him feel small, his school. The next morning, he stood up in front of the student government meeting, a room full of legacy kids and smirking faces, and proposed something no one expected: a new student coalition, one that would advocate for curriculum inclusion, representation in school leadership, and transparency in event selections. "Minority students at this school make up over 30% of enrollment," he said, voice firm. "But we don't have even one rep on the student council. Why?" A few shifted in their seats. Some chuckled. One senior rolled his eyes. "If you wanted power, Malik, maybe you should have joined student council. You know, like the rest of us." "I did, twice," Malik shot back. "And both times, I got fewer votes than kids who didn't even campaign." Silence. He dropped the data, participation statistics, disciplinary disparities, grade distribution breakdowns. He had spent hours compiling them. He didn't just bring emotion, he brought receipts. Still, the council voted his proposal down. 9-1. Malik walked out of that room with his hands in his pockets, eyes burning, but head high. They thought it would crush him. It didn't. Instead, he printed flyers, started a website, sent emails, talked to kids after class, teachers, parents, and slowly, one by one, students who had never felt seen began showing up. He wasn't alone anymore. Have you ever tried to speak up in a room that wasn't built to hear your voice? By the time the second week rolled around, the whispers had grown louder than the silence. Malik wasn't just that angry kid anymore. He had a name, a face, and a purpose. What started as a hallway conversation turned into after-school meetings, then flyers, then petitions. And just like that, a ripple started moving through the school. It wasn't dramatic, no rallies or loud chants, at least not yet. But students, especially the quiet ones, began raising their hands more, questioning more, asking why the school's reading list still didn't have a single black author, why the African American History unit was optional, why every poster on the wall featured only one type of face. Some teachers welcomed the questions. Others tightened up, accusing Malik of stirring division. One even sent him to the principal's office for challenging the curriculum. That meeting was cold. "Malik," Principal Hargrove said, adjusting his cufflinks as if preparing for a photo op. "You're on a dangerous path. This isn't how change is made." But Malik was ready. He opened his notebook, worn, pages bent from too much use, and slid it across the desk. "Then tell me how change is made," he said. "Because so far, asking nicely hasn't worked." The principal said nothing, and Malik walked out. He had the vision now, but he still didn't have power. So he set his sights higher. He decided to run for Youth City Council. It sounded absurd at first. Who would vote for a kid who made school administrators uncomfortable? Who was labeled as angry by parents at the PTA? Who wasn't born in this neighborhood? But Malik wasn't running for them. He was running for the quiet kids. The kids too scared to speak up in class. The ones who'd been called too loud, too aggressive, or too much their whole lives. And somehow, they started to believe in him. He booked the community center, designed his own flyers, wrote every speech himself, even knocked on doors, some slammed in his face, some opening just enough to listen. He wasn't backed by money, but he was backed by something bigger: truth, lived experience, and an unshakable refusal to stay silent. Because Malik knew he wasn't just campaigning. He was answering the question every doubter had ever thrown at him. What makes you think you belong here? The City Youth Council debate night was held in a modest auditorium with creaky floors and rows of folding chairs that looked older than Malik himself. The other candidates showed up in suits and polished shoes, flanked by parents, mentors, and printed talking points. Malik? He showed up with a backpack and his worn-out notebook, the same one he'd been filling since the first time someone told him he didn't belong. He stood backstage, peeking out from behind the curtains. His heart thudded like a drumline in his chest. But not from fear, from anticipation, from the weight of every story he carried that no one else in that room dared to speak out loud. When they called his name, the applause was polite, sparse. He walked up to the microphone. No notes, no teleprompter, just the kind of quiet fury that makes your voice tremble not from nerves, but from truth. "My name is Malik Hassan. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight." He let that hang for a moment. "I wasn't supposed to run for anything. I was supposed to stay quiet, stay small, and stay grateful. Because that's what people like me are told, that we should be thankful just to be allowed in the room." He looked around. A few heads tilted. Some squirmed. "I've been called angry, difficult, too ambitious. I've been followed in grocery stores. I've been asked where I'm really from. I've been told that change should be slow because fast change makes people uncomfortable." He took a breath, then leaned into the mic. "But I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm here to represent the kids who are never in the photos, whose names are always mispronounced, who have to fight to be seen as more than a statistic." The room was silent, still. "I don't have a campaign manager. I don't have donors. I don't even have a ride home tonight. What I have is a voice, and if I don't use it, who will?" In that moment, he wasn't just a boy standing at a podium. He was a mirror, and some people in that audience didn't like what they saw. As Malik stepped down from the podium, a murmur rippled through the crowd, equal parts admiration and discomfort. The panel moderator, a former council member in his 60s with a smug smile and salt and pepper comb-over, leaned toward the mic and cleared his throat. "Thank you, Malik. That was passionate. Let's try to stick to the issues moving forward." The word passionate hung in the air like a warning. It didn't mean insightful. It meant too much. But Malik wasn't done. He turned back toward the mic, the fire in his eyes refusing to dim. "With respect," he said, his voice still calm. The issues are what I just talked about. Because when kids are bullied in schools, when people are denied housing or opportunities because of their name or skin color, that's not separate from policy. That is policy. That's what I'm here to change. A few people in the crowd clapped, but behind the scenes, someone wasn't happy. A tech assistant near the stage received a signal from the back, a hand wave, then a nod, and suddenly Malik's mic went dead. He tapped it once. Nothing. The moderator shifted uncomfortably. All right, let's move to our next candidate. But Malik didn't step down. Instead, he raised his voice, louder than before, not shouting, just projecting. With every syllable, it carried, "You can cut the mic," he said, "but you can't cut the truth." The silence was stunned, and then it happened, clapping, first from one side of the room, then the other, then a standing ovation, with kids in the back whistling, parents nodding, and even one teacher wiping her eyes. Here's a question. Why is it that when a young black kid speaks with conviction, they try to call it disruption? By the time Malik walked out of that auditorium, his name was already being whispered through hallways and into inboxes. Not because he made a scene, but because he made sense. Local blogs picked it up. Someone posted a video of the mic cutting incident on TikTok. Within hours, it had thousands of shares. They tried to silence him, and he raised his voice. But with attention came pushback. The next morning, Malik found a crumpled flyer taped to his locker. "We don't need another race-baiting activist running for office. Go back where you came from." It wasn't signed. He stared at it for a long moment before peeling it off. He folded it once, placed it carefully in his backpack, and walked away. But the silence didn't last. In class, someone snickered as he sat down. Another muttered, "Should have known he'd make it all about race." Even a teacher, one who had smiled at him just days before, seemed distant now, hesitant. That evening, Malik sat alone on his porch, phone buzzing with mixed notifications. Praise from strangers, hate from classmates. One message simply read, "You'll never win. People like you never do." He closed his eyes. The voices were loud, the doubts were creeping in. But inside, something else had begun to rise. Not anger, not fear, conviction. Malik didn't sleep that night. He laid there, staring at the ceiling, phone still buzzing beside him. He read every message, every insult, every sliver of support, until the screen blurred through tears he refused to wipe away. But when morning came, he wasn't broken. He was awake. He pulled out a sheet of paper and started writing. Not a speech, a plan. Because if the school didn't want his voice in the auditorium, maybe the city needed to hear it. By noon, he was standing outside the local community center with a makeshift sign, "Let us speak." Beside him stood only 2 classmates. But as the day passed, more arrived. Kids who had felt invisible in classrooms, unheard at school board meetings, silenced in student councils. Black, brown, immigrant, queer, poor, forgotten. They didn't need a stage. They were the message. Malik grabbed a borrowed megaphone. His hands trembled. Then he spoke. "My name is Malik Johnson. I've lived in this city my whole life. I've walked your streets, sat in your schools, shopped in your stores. I belong here. We belong here. And we're done being told to go back to places we never left." The crowd roared. Not with noise, but with recognition. Local reporters arrived. Not many, but enough. One camera pointed his way, and Malik didn't blink. "We're not asking for permission to exist. We're demanding the right to shape the place we already call home." And in that moment, on cracked pavement beneath a sagging banner, not in a marble-floored council chamber, he proved something most adults still hadn't learned. Power doesn't start in office. It starts in voice. The footage spread faster than anyone expected. Within 24 hours, Malik's speech outside the community center had over 300,000 views. The clip of him gripping the megaphone with shaking hands, eyes burning not with fear but with clarity, circulated across local news, then national accounts. TikTok edits, reaction videos, stitched duets, everywhere. And the school, they stayed silent. No statement. No apology. Just tight lips and locked doors. But something was shifting. City Hall took notice. A councilwoman, Latina, young, tired of being sidelined herself, shared Malik's video with the caption, "This is leadership." An old civil rights group reached out to offer mentorship. A youth activism network sent him a care package with a note, "You're not alone." Even Malik's classmates began to walk differently down the hallways. Teachers paused when he raised his hand now. The principal, who had once told him, "This school isn't for politics," now offered a forced smile in the hallway and called him young man instead of kid. But Malik didn't let it soften him. He'd learned something. Change makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people scramble to control the narrative. That week, the school board quietly added a new agenda item to the upcoming public meeting: Student Speech Guidelines Review. Malik saw it and smiled. They weren't ignoring him. They were reacting. That meant he was winning. So he drafted a letter, formal, articulate, unflinching, and requested to speak at the meeting. Not as a victim, as a representative of every kid who'd ever been told, "Not you." And this time, no one was going to silence his mic. The school board meeting wasn't supposed to be a battlefield, but that night, it became one. Rows of metal folding chairs stretched across the gymnasium floor, most filled, some standing. Parents, teachers, press. A local news crew stood quietly in the back, boom mic angled low. Malik sat in the second row, his hands folded in his lap, but his eyes locked forward like he was staring down a firing squad. They hadn't called his name yet, but they would. He was on the agenda as student comment number 4, slotted in the tail end of public remarks. Before him, speakers droned on about budget approvals, maintenance requests, textbook replacements. Bureaucracy meant to bore, meant to exhaust. But Malik, he didn't flinch. He remembered his father's voice the night before, over dinner. "They'll try to make you feel small by making this feel big. Just remember, it's not bigger than your truth." The microphone crackled. Number 4. Malik Carter. All eyes turned. Malik rose slowly. Not with swagger, but with something stronger. Steadiness. His sneakers thudded softly on the wood floor as he approached the lectern. The microphone was too high. He adjusted it with a quiet, "Excuse me." The movement alone disarmed the room. It was human, not theatrical. He looked up. "I wasn't sure if I should speak tonight," he began, voice low, clear. "Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I knew some people wouldn't want to hear it." A pause. No paper in his hands. No script. Just his truth. "I was told last month to go back where I came from, by a teacher, in this district, in front of other students." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Some eyes darted toward each other. Others stared straight ahead, frozen. "I've lived in this city my whole life. I went to the same playgrounds, drank from the same water fountains, stood in the same lunch lines. But when I spoke up about injustice, about how kids who look like me are treated, I was told I didn't belong." He scanned the board members. "I'm not here to accuse. I'm not here to shout. I'm here to testify, because the truth is this: silence protects no one but the people who caused the pain." A board member coughed, trying to signal the timer. But Malik ignored it. "You want new speech guidelines? Fine. But make sure they include this. When a black kid speaks up, don't shut him down. Don't bury his voice under policy. Don't drown him out with excuses. Listen." His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. "Because if you don't, he'll take that silence, build something louder from it, and bring it right back here for the next kid who's told he's not enough." He stepped back. No dramatic pause. No grand bow. Just walked back to his seat and sat down. The room didn't erupt in applause. It held its breath. That kind of truth didn't need cheering. It needed reckoning. And you, watching this right now, what would you have done in that room? Sat frozen in your chair, or stood with Malik? The next few days were a blur. News segments, phone calls, online chatter. Malik's speech, recorded by a student with shaky hands and a steady heart, went viral. Not millions of views. Not yet. But the right people saw it. Local organizers, journalists, a state education representative, and more importantly, kids. Other kids. From neighboring schools, districts, and even across state lines. Black kids, brown kids, immigrant kids. Kids who had been told to sit down, be quiet, fit in, not question. They watched Malik's voice fill a room that once tried to shrink him. He didn't become a celebrity. He became a mirror. The school board responded with what school boards always respond with. Statements, reviews, investigation panels with titles too long and results too vague. But Malik didn't wait for them. He started hosting after-school meetings at the local library. What began with 5 classmates became 20, then 40. Parents started showing up. Teachers who had felt afraid to speak out before joined in quietly, sitting at the back. They called it the mic sessions. It wasn't a protest. It was a blueprint. Every Friday, Malik helped young people draft their own speeches, letters to the board, scripts for City Hall. He taught them how to document, to verify, to protect themselves. His mantra was simple. If they tell you this place wasn't made for you, build one that is. By spring, Malik had partnered with 2 local nonprofits to launch a civic leadership program for teens of color. He wasn't even 18, but he had already done what adults in that community had failed to do for decades. He created space. Not just space to complain, but space to prepare, to speak, lead, challenge, to organize, and the boy they once laughed out of the auditorium was now being invited to speak at city events, education forums, even a youth summit in D.C. But he always said no to one thing. He never spoke on the same stage as the board members who once tried to silence him. Why? Because he believed redemption requires accountability, not a shared spotlight. And maybe that's the most powerful thing he ever taught them. Graduation day came with rain. Not a storm, but a steady drizzle. Soft, rhythmic, cleansing. Malik stood beneath a shared umbrella held by his mother, his gown slightly damp at the bottom, his tassel already soaked. He didn't mind. He liked that it rained. He liked the symbolism of it. Something old being washed away. His name was called last. Not because of alphabetical order, but because the principal for once wanted to acknowledge what everyone in the stadium already knew. This wasn't just a student walking across the stage. This was history. Malik Reed, the kid who was told to go back where he came from, the one who used to eat lunch alone, the one who cried silently in bathroom stalls, was now walking toward a different kind of future. He wasn't going to college right away. He had been accepted to several, sure, even offered a full scholarship by a private university that had once turned a blind eye to applicants like him. But he had other plans. Because 3 weeks before graduation, Malik Reed had done something no student from Eastwood High had ever done. He filed his candidacy to run for city council, not as a stunt, not as a statement. But because there was a seat open, and Malik knew no one better equipped to fill it than a young man who had already fought every system that tried to push him down, his campaign was quiet but effective. He didn't hire flashy consultants. He printed flyers with friends, knocked on doors with classmates, held town halls in parking lots and barber shops. He spoke to people no politician ever bothered to talk to. He promised nothing he couldn't deliver. He just told them the truth, his truth, their truth. And when election day came, Malik Reed, at only 18 years old, won with 62% of the vote. The youngest councilman in the city's history, sworn in by the same judge who had once presided over a school district discrimination case, now shaking Malik's hand with visible pride. He stood at that podium in the city hall, suit tailored but slightly wrinkled. He was still Malik after all, and took a slow breath before speaking. People told me I didn't belong here, that I should go back where I came from, but this is where I come from, this city, this block, this seat, and I'm not going anywhere. His voice didn't waver. Not anymore. He looked into the crowd and saw familiar faces. His mother, tears, silent and proud. His former classmates, some cheering, others stunned into respect. Even a few former teachers who had once looked the other way, now forced to watch a boy they'd underestimated take the reins of power they thought belonged to them. And near the back, holding a hand-drawn sign that simply said, "We belong too," stood a group of middle schoolers Malik had mentored, brown and black and brilliant. He smiled at them. That smile meant, "You're next." Because Malik's story didn't end with him proving them wrong. It began with him showing others what was possible. How would you have responded if someone said you didn't belong? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Black Canvas, where stories like Malik's find their voice.